Hey everyone, today we will discuss why CO2 is must for your planted aquarium. Before I start today's discussion, I'd like to set up some context for this discussion. I'm a big fan of YouTube videos, especially various aquarium related content which are available over YouTube. I follow quite a lot of content creators who specifically talks about fish keeping or planted aquariums on YouTube. Recently, I'm seeing a trend. I came across tons of videos advocating low-tech planted tanks without CO2 and proper fertilization method. Even though the creators are simply sharing their own experience with low-tech setup, there is a problem. These videos on YouTube setting up a notion among young beginner hobbyists that proper light, CO2 injection and fertilization is optional and to some extent not required for setting up and maintaining a planted tank. These low-tech planted tank videos are prepared keeping YouTube views in mind, and in many cases the tank itself is ditched as soon as video is uploaded in YouTube. Low-tech planted tank or tank without proper light, CO2 fertilization and substrate may be possible, but it is not ideal practice for beginners. Planted tank without CO2 injection fertilizer is very hard to balance. The growth will be extremely slow. I'd like to give a compelling comparison to explain the issue further. Normally, we humans eat 3 times in a day: breakfast, lunch and dinner. Now, human can survive with only 1 meal per day as well. But it is definitely not an ideal scenario. The same goes with planted tank. A proper planted tank requires adequate lighting, CO2 injection, fertilizer and substrate. These are main key attributes of a planted tank. Skipping CO2 injection fertilizer is as same as a person trying to survive without lunch and dinner and trying to survive with only 1 meal per day. Of course, planted tank without CO2 injection is possible. In such case, plant's growth will be very slow. You may come across various algae issues and it's pretty difficult to balance the planted tank without proper CO2 and fertilizer. On top of that, a low-tech planted tank will never achieve that lush green look which you normally see in a CO2 injected planted tank. Low-tech planted tank in many cases may become very costly to set up and manage. Let's take an example of this 50-gallon planted tank. I started with only a few ferns and now look at it. It's completely dominated with ferns. Without CO2, your plants will hardly grow. So, in order to maintain a green lush planted tank and combat algae, you may have to add more plants initially. More plants mean more initial cost. So low-tech planted tanks are cheaper. This particular notion is not true. This planted tank that you are seeing, I only spent few bucks on few pots of fern and now look at it. it's completely overrun with different type of ferns. All these ferns are grown from only few pots of fern which I purchased 9 months ago, and all credit goes to CO2 injection and fertilization. I highly advocate usage of CO2 in planted tank. All my tanks have CO2 injection. I do understand that pressurized CO2 systems are costly. If you don't want to invest that much in your first planted tank, then I'll simply suggest to use do-it-yourself CO2 using baking soda and citric acid. Do-it-yourself CO2 will work fine as long as your tank volume is up to 15 gallon. So I hope I am able to convey the importance of conventional planted tank approach with proper light, CO2 and fertilization. I hope to see you next week in a different video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.